Aloha and welcome to the Empowered Empath podcast. My name is Jennifer O'Neill, and joining me is my co host, Michelle Schneider. Hello, how are you?
Hello. Good.
Good. So, we are doing a spiritual lifestyle podcast together now, and we had some fantastic feedback. Everybody really, really liked it. And so, we're going to continue. I think it went really well. I do, before we get to the show's topic, want to tell people before I forget that if you comment on this show on YouTube, probably because I don't think you can comment on like iTunes.
Okay.
If you comment on the show on YouTube and let us know what you would like us to discuss next, if it has to do with spirituality or things you're wondering about, me and Michelle will be going through those after every show to talk to you about what it is that you would like to know about. Right. And so I think YouTube would be the only place that you can do that. So if you are on iTunes, you can easily go to keystothespiritworld.com and my YouTube link is up there because sometimes it's hard to find. I think you could probably put Jennifer O'Neill Empowered Empath,
I was
but
yeah, I always do Jennifer O'Neill Spirit just because there's an actress that shares her name, which makes it
yes,
difficult for you to find.
right? She's famous, and I have people ask me, like, if I on a call, "Are you the Jennifer O'Neill?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not," but it's funny because she's really a lot older than I am, so I'm like, "Wow, I can judge people's ages by if they know who this Jennifer O'Neill is, because most people are not gonna know who she is, so it's funny. So, well, it must come up then, right? If you type spirit?
I do, yeah, and then
Yeah.
you're right at the top.
Okay. So, today we're gonna be talking about a subject that I got an email on. Then I posted it on Facebook, and a lot of people commented. But it's stuff me and Michelle have talked about before, and I think it's a really good one because it messes people up. So I got this email from Carolyn, who basically said, "I'm going to read it here. One thing I'd really like to love, not like but love, to find out is exactly what is my purpose for existing. I don't think I'm on the right path to find that out. And I'm 50 now. So I don't want to waste any more time." And I found that really intriguing and a good email because I have tons of people that ask me about this. And I think it's a good topic. What is my life purpose, or how do you find your purpose? And we've discussed this at the spiritual boot camps. You just brought that up, right?
Yeah, I think we spent kind of a whole day, that was like a theme around
Yes,
the
that
different
is a theme.
purpose.
So when we do the spiritual boot camps, not only do we work with, or well, I guess it'd be we because you're involved. Not only do we work with figuring out what your abilities are, and I help you to develop those abilities and you leave with a confidence in your skill, but we do go over life purpose because I feel like it's very important. And we talked about this a little bit this morning because I think that everybody at some point in their time is going, why am I here? What what is my theme? What is my life purpose? And they can't seem to quite grasp it, and they can't quite seem to figure out what it is. You've had that issue. I know I've
Yeah.
had the issue before when I was younger. Didn't you have a story about that issue or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think everybody kinda goes through this at some point, and I think with me, it was probably around 2017. I felt like there were a lot of things shifting in my life, and I just I had gotten to a really good place in my career, and it felt like, "Man, I should be happy. I did it. Why do I feel so bad? Why do I feel like I am so lost?" And I just remember that feeling, and that really just got me started on questioning. I did have those questions of like, what am I doing here on this planet? Like, why am
Right,
I here? This doesn't feel good. Not having a good time. Like, I got to figure this out. But
right.
as depressing as that can be sometimes, I do think I was in kind of a dark place, but it got me questioning things. And I think that questioning was really like the spark to figuring out a better path for me. I'll say that I probably don't have everything figured out, at this point. I'm not sure that anybody ever really does, but I definitely have a lot more hope. And I
Well,
feel
I feel that they definitely do figure out their purpose, and I feel that you're on the right track to do so. But I think that you are correct in questioning is the first step to figuring that out. Because as we talked about in the workshop, one of the things, and I'm looking at this on my phone too, because I have more questions from Facebook, which we're going to cover all of them, but I wanted to kind of add these in as we get to talking. Some other people then chimed in and said, basically, you know, does our purpose change throughout our lifetime or lifetimes? And can we have multiple life purposes during our lifetime? And I think that that's very poignant because I had told my daughter this a long time ago. And it's something that I feel like people they always assume they have one life purpose. I was here, put on earth to do this one thing. And that's not true. So you will and do have multiple life themes or multiple purposes throughout your lifetime, and they will shift and change. So, where you're saying in 2017 that happened, you might have found that you were a lot more aligned in 2012 or something. And then you're like, you can go off the rails and go, now, how did I end up here? And to clarify that a little bit more, a lot of people are going to have different life themes and life purposes in their 20s than they are in their 30s and they're in their 40s, 50s, etc. And some of that will relate to children, families, marriages, or other extreme life events that can happen within your lifetime. And these life markers are going to happen because they're things that you have written into your chart from birth. Before that you come down, you've written things in. So there might also be people who have been deployed at some point in their life, and that might be their purpose at that time. Or some people that have had family issues that they really had to work through for maybe a period of 5 years. So these things can become a part of sort of your life mission at that point in time and divert you away from what you feel like your life purpose is. And I think that what we should talk about as far as life purpose goes, what everybody I feel like is striving for and what they mean about their life purpose is something that fulfills them. This is how people recognize it. They feel it that to the core of their being, to the very core of your soul, that this is what you're supposed to be doing at this moment in time. That this is a part of why you're put on earth. This is part of the knowledge or the gifts that you were born with, or it's part of the knowledge that you've gathered over, I don't know, months or years since you've been put on this earth. Maybe you went to school to become a doctor or whatever, and you have had to gather knowledge that you didn't have when you were 8. So there are many ways that your purpose unfolds, which we're going to talk about because most people who are asking this question are feeling a lot of discord. So they are feeling the opposite of that high frequency feeling that you get in your chest center, that connectiveness that you get when you're like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And everybody wants that. But if you don't have that, like you were saying, you start feeling a discord and then you start searching for it. So you're searching for that feeling, and that feeling is connected to your spiritual body. And your spiritual body contains information of gifts and part of your birth chart, Akashic records, things of that nature, and things that you've written in for you to be here at this moment in time, life experiences and things that you're supposed to do. And I think that people need to understand what you're looking for is that feeling, that alignment. if that makes sense. Does that make sense so
Yeah,
far?
yeah.
Yeah. So then when they're experiencing discord, they're like, okay, well, clearly this is the opposite of alignment. And so I need to get back on track. So my point to that is you may have been aligned with your purpose in your 20s. You may have been aligned as you were younger, prior to 2017. But then when you start noticing you go off the rails, that's when it comes around again and you're back to what's my purpose. So, yes, you can have multiple purposes and you can have multiple life themes, and everybody's going to. You can even have multiple purposes going on at this very point time in your life. You could be having two purposes that you're fulfilling and two needs that you are working with, or two different skills. That's actually not uncommon. So I think that looking for the one lifetime purpose messes people up. The one thing that they were put here on earth for, the one um, be all end all purpose and soul fulfillment thing that they're supposed to do. And if you think about it, that would really kind of be a bummer if it was just one thing,
Yeah.
because then sometimes you change and then you're interested in other things, and that creates soul expansion. And when you create soul expansion, you get more access to more knowledge and more downloads. And then we are super tuned in on a soul frequency level. I feel you get bored if it was just literally one entire like for your whole life,
Well, yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, it wouldn't make sense because if you're like, "Oh, figured it out. I know what I'm doing." And then what, right? Like, what's
Yeah,
the point of continuing if you're like, "I figured it out," don't
yeah,
really do anything else.
exactly, exactly. And then the other thing is the journey part, which none of us want to hear. So, um, here's what messes people up though when it comes to figuring out what makes you feel aligned, what connects you with your purpose and who you are. And I just want to reiterate, because I really want people to get this part. When you are aligned and you feel that connected feeling in your chest, in your heart center, but in your chest, and you're like, this is it. That is you connecting with your spiritual self and its knowledge. And that brings clarity to you on a lot of different levels. So that essentially is why it feels like you're finding your purpose, because you have, I don't want to say decoded, but you've connected in with a lot of info from other lifetimes and a lot of info from who you are beyond the physical level. And that feels good and it feels right. And it feels like you have knowledge to work with universal laws, and things start synchronistically happening and manifesting, and opportunities come into your life because you are on a different frequency. In order to do that, you need to not be so very or super focused into the 3D body. If we are so consumed with our 3D life, our physical body, the physical rules that society puts upon us. Oh, you must stick this out, because if you don't, then people are going to look at you as a quitter. Or, you must continue down this path because you went down this road for 10 years already. Why quit now? You're going to get a promotion. Or you went to college for this. Why would you stop? That you put all this time in. And so society has trained everybody not to pivot away from discord. And I find that really irritating, but also fascinating at the same time. We are literally trained to continue down the path of discord because it pleases other people around us. So when you had your experience in 2017, luckily, it appears that you didn't have anybody forcing you down that road of discord, which opened your knowledge base to seeking a different path, which then allowed you to pivot. So, one of the things that I'm finding the most interesting right now is everybody wants to teach their children, other people, how not to pivot. Nope, you have to, if something looks like it's working in the 3D world, do not navigate from that. That will take you so far away from your spiritual purpose, and alignment that you're going to be light years away from it at this point in time. Because most people, if they do not pivot, if you wouldn't have pivoted during 2017 from your questions, where do you think you would be today, and how do you think you would feel if you would have forced yourself to continue down that road?
I would be miserable. I'd be stuck. I'd still be working, for somebody else, for an employer. I wouldn't have really, 2019 was about the time that I started to be like, you know what, I'm going to go out on my own and really try to find my own path. But the one thing that I do want to add to this, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this too, is that even though I was shifting paths, I felt like every experience and thing that I had come across along the way was kind of like building me up for this new path. Like it was a skill set that I could take with me to develop. Does that make sense? Where
Oh
it's like
yeah,
every
100%. And I
little
love
piece
that
is
you add
valuable.
100%. I love that you add that, because I also feel that people, when they're looking for their purpose, depending upon their age, they don't realize that sometimes people are looking for a soulful purpose that they may discover in their 50s when they're in their 20s or 30s, and you cannot bridge that gap yet. And I think that that's to your point. You cannot bridge the gap because you haven't had enough life experiences, and maybe you haven't gathered enough knowledge to get you from 20 to your knowledge point at 50. And to kind of give you an example in my own world is, I really really wanted to write books in my 20s. I was like, that was what I wanted to do. I was like super just invested in it, and I tried to come up with all these different scenarios, etc. But my path was spiritual work, and I knew that, but I couldn't figure out what was my knowledge at that point to write books. Fast forward, I needed to be in the spiritual field for 10 years in order to gather enough downloads and information that I'm like, okay, yes, here's what I'm supposed to write about. I get this now. I couldn't have written those same books at 20 that I wrote in my 30s, late 30s. Now, to even elaborate on that more, again, I've been in the spiritual realm for 30 some years at this point, professionally, and I'm writing more books right now. And I have 3 that I'm currently set to write. One I'm full blown into, which hopefully will come out in the next month or so. But even when I wrote books 10 years ago or 13 years ago, whatever it was, I can't even remember now, I didn't have the knowledge that I have today. So I still developed a lot more, even more spiritual knowledge from in my 30s to where I'm at now, that there's no way I could have done it at that time. And then comes in timing. That was one of the things that we were talking about, me and you earlier, is timing also plays a role. So when as I'm writing my books now, timing is very important. And I know this, and I keep hearing this over and over again. The specific books I'm writing now on spiritual health and empath stuff, they are very poignant to being released at a certain time within the spirit realm. That is very important, that they were not released prior. They wouldn't have been received the same way. And so somehow in our brains, we want to fast forward to the end, like you're saying. It's like we don't want the journey, we want the end result. But then when you get there, it's like, then where do you go from there? Now we go on to another purpose or another path. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's timing that's involved, there's knowledge that you gain, and that's why your purpose is never typically going to be the same all the way through your entire life. You will need to gather knowledge and have experiences along the way. Also, you may have and most likely have several different purposes that you will do during different times in your life, with marriage, kids, all that kind of stuff we were talking about. But how do you find it? If you are struggling with trying to find your purpose right now, I can tell you that you are really far away from spiritual alignment. Because when you start struggling and getting frustrated, you are experiencing discord. And that means somewhere within your spiritual body, you can feel the information is right there, but it's like there's a giant brick wall between you and the spiritual information. And that brick wall is basically called being physical and living within a physical existence. And that brick wall is the parameters of all the physical rules that we abide by, which is trying to make other people happy, forcing us not to pivot, forcing us to be responsible. And so when we start playing by all these physical rules, and that develops who we are and it develops our mindset and our belief system, there's going to be a brick wall there because your purpose doesn't lie within the physical world. It lies within the spiritual world. And that's the point. It lies within your spiritual self. So, how do you break down the brick wall? You do not find your purpose, then develop your spirituality or your spiritual gifts and or your spiritual connection. You have to develop your spiritual connection first. That begins to dissolve the brick wall. And when the brick wall begins to dissolve, you start to get clarity on where it is you're supposed to go.
That's so interesting that you say this because 2017 was the year. So I was questioning everything. Why am I here? I was like, there gotta be more to the universe, right? And so I probably hadn't picked up a book in several years, probably since college, right? And I started reading for the first time. And I found a book on, I think it might have been something about law of attraction. And I was like, ooh, that's really interesting. I want to read more about that. And so I went into a full blown rabbit hole of just consuming every piece of knowledge that I could about spirituality, whether that was books. I would go down YouTube rabbit holes and I would find all kinds of information. And I just started consuming everything. And that's really where this like connection to spirituality started. That's when it all started shifting and developing. So it was like that questioning led me to really finding, because before then I was like, spirituality, I don't, didn't know
Yeah.
anything about it, wasn't
Yeah.
interested.
Whatever. How's that going to help me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
weird.
Right. And so you literally did the exact right thing. If you're feeling stuck and you're not pivoting in any way, two things are happening. Your belief system is very solid that you are not supposed to pivot typically, and you have not connected with your spirituality and or source and your spiritual self, which is where all the knowledge is held. So, in order to break down the brick wall, we need to explore our spirituality and our spiritual gifts. We need to start acknowledging our spiritual body. We need to start reconnecting with our spiritual body. This is, too bad I didn't have the book out now because I talk a lot about this stuff in my next book. So if you're struggling with this, definitely watch for it to be coming out. The Empath Awakening book that I'm doing, because it's right now I notice most people are definitely imbalanced when it comes to their spiritual body and their physical body. And the spiritual body and the physical body, they want to work together. The physical body and the brain wants to include your spiritual self and how the spiritual body operates. It craves that connection. You, us, ourselves, within our stubbornness and within the 3D rules, we block that and we cause problems. We literally spiritually block ourselves. We're like, yep, nope, we're not going to do that because we don't know what's going to happen. It's fearful down there. And anything that seems, I guess I would say, blank in a sense, like you don't have a projected outcome of what might happen, which is why people call psychics. If you don't have that projected outcome, you immediately go to worst case scenario because that's how your brain is trained. We are primarily trained by worst case scenario, fear, worry, and not pivoting. That this is what your brain has consumed most of the information for your most of your life. And now it decides that this is the way that we compartmentalize and that we work through this. The spiritual body has a lot more info on how things actually work, manifest, create. And there was an article too, which we were going to talk about at some point in time, but I found this really funny. If I can find it, I'll link below because I think I texted it to you.
Yeah.
But there was a physicist in the UK, I believe, that has now discovered that all this matter and mass that's in the world, even in the physical world, is basically energetic information. So he went so far as to say, I think didn't he say like
Did he call
he
it
thought
an
three
element?
fourths, huh?
Did he call it an element? Like, it's the
Yeah.
information in and of itself is
Yes,
an
is in
element
this
just as
element,
in
which is
solid
basically
or
energy.
yeah.
Yeah, so this element would be energy, and it holds and retains information. And I think he said 2/3 he believes of the universe is made up of this element or this energy, and it holds information. And I was like, this is amazing, just because this is how psychically I see things. And I have asked some of my colleagues, do that you see things the same way? And they were like, yes, but psychically, you can see and feel that this energy is out there. Like it's like a vapor. You can see it, you can feel it. It's like a vapor, and it holds all of this information. So even in the materialistic world, in the 3D world, it's still out there. And he went so far as to then indicate that this element will then form and create mass, which then turns into things, which is literally the law of attraction and literally all the spiritual laws that we deal with. It on a psychic level, it's everything that we see. We see all this information out there like vapor, and then it begins to form things. And so there are so many universal laws and rules that actually dictate our physical existence. But since we're not trained in that aspect and we're taught to not question and nothing is real if you can't see it, et cetera, then we are trained away from seeking this knowledge or understanding this knowledge. And then we view things in the physical reality as very hard and hard to reach. So when you reconnect with your spiritual self, your spiritual body, and you start training your brain on how to work within the physical realm and the spiritual realm, you start teaching it how to allow the two bodies to work cohesively instead of separately. We now have balance. And then when we have balance, that allows us access to this information, which then lies your purpose and your destiny, if you will, for that moment in time. But again, to get there, you have to start connecting and seeking your spiritual gifts, your spiritual knowledge. You can do that through meditating. You can do that through classes. You can do that through spirit journaling, which I tell everybody to do all the time. You can do that through being more aware of your spiritual experiences, which is why I like the spirit journaling. If you start writing down all your intuitive hits during the day, your signs and synchronicities during the day, you start to realize how much more of a role your spiritual body plays in your life. And therefore, it helps your brain to go, oh, this is a real thing. This is not just something that I should dismiss. And the more information you feed the brain, the more it wants to jump on board and connect everything cohesively. Now we're allowing alignment. But with that alignment, you will realize all the things in your life that you're doing that's causing you discord.
You gotta
This is a
play
whole
detective.
process.
That's
What?
what I do. So you gotta kind of play it like a detective, like
Yes.
you're figuring things out, and that was one of the things I think that really helped me out was, like, really be an observer of not only your thoughts, but, like, what fills your cup? What lights you up with joy? Like, what are those things that, you get excited about to really start to find that passion of what feels good and what doesn't feel good so that you can kind of start to figure out those things.
Right. And it's not just finding your passion too, although that's a very good point. But I feel like you need to do that and develop your psychic senses, if you will, at the same time. So when you are born, you're learned to touch things, feel heat, feel cold. You're learned to walk. You learn to balance. You learn to use your eyes. You learn to hear things and differentiate from different noises. But what people don't realize is your very first language from birth is energy. All children, all babies read energy. That is their very first language. It's your spiritual language. And so if you've got the balancing down pat, you've got the touch, the feel, all that kind of stuff. But you need to refamiliarize yourself with your spiritual senses, which would be your third eye, the ability to read energy. You can spiritually become very in tune with some of the same senses, only within the spiritual body. The difference is you might not have, what would I say, visual confirmation on things that you experience with a spiritual body. But if you have faith that you can definitely feel things, because you will feel that resonate physically within the body, then you're on the right track. So while discovering what your passion is and remembering what your passion is, and in order to do that, because I've literally had a lot of adults say, I don't even know. I've raised kids. I've been at this job. I've lost my identity. Women especially will lose their identity. They just do. They raise children. They take care of the family. They take care of the home front, their kids, their husband or wives or whoever, and they lose their identity. Their identity becomes a caretaker, and their care. Usually, the funny thing is, typically, if you become a caretaker and you're in that theme, you're actually an empath, and that's really easy to help you unfold what your purpose is, because empaths are wired to become healers. And so then it goes to the next question, which I had somebody actually ask me. I know I'm meant to heal, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. So maybe you've gotten to the part where you realize you're supposed to be a healer and you don't know what to do with that information. But that's again where you need more knowledge. So this is why I mentor healers, because even if you decide that, okay, I feel passionate about, like what you said, I'm passionate about healing. I know within the core of my being, I can feel it when I think about it right here in the chest. I'm meant to be a healer. Now what? The problem with that is there's not a ton of quote unquote healing schools that are metaphysically based, right? So you could be an acupuncturist, you could be an herbologist, you could, become a doctor. Those are all healers. They're healers that are reputable within the 3D realm. Or you can do Reiki, massage, things that are a little bit more alternative. Or you can do energy work, psychic work, and things of that nature. But if you want to figure out what is my role as a healer, you still have to do the same thing that you said. What are you drawn to? What areas are you drawn to? Are you drawn to psychic abilities? Are you drawn to energy work? Are you drawn to talking with spirits? What past lives? Are you drawn to past lives? If you can figure out where you're drawn to, then you can do what you did and take it to the next level and go to somebody who has classes or mentorship. I think I'm glad that this came up, because even if you have a purpose or a theme as a healer, you still need to train. It's not just that you're going to go, oh, yep, I'm a healer, and so I'm going to start healing people. No, it doesn't work like that. It didn't even work like that for me. And I've spent decades, right? I'm like, what is a decade for a minute? And then when I say it out loud, it sounds terrible. But I've spent decades honing different layers of my craft. I really have. And if you're going to be in the healing field or want to be such as I am, you need to commit to developing that craft. And it might be in layers, like all destinies or purposes. You may have to develop your gifts, your purpose in stages. At first, I was very into psychic stuff, developed that really well. Then I got into channeling, developed that. Then I went into past lives and past life regressions. I developed that as far as I could go. Then I went into dreams. Then I went into mediumship. It was all stages and layers.
Well,
I would
we
hone the craft.
We
And
had
then I was
also talked about, the most recent with the health, the healings,
yeah.
that you've done, and that's not something that you said you could have just started out doing. You needed all of that experience to come before that in order to, do what you did. I mean, you did a healing on me, which was very transformational, in my life, but you said, you didn't even know, that you were capable of doing that.
Yes, and that is a good point because there's no way I could do the healing work I'm doing now 10 years ago. I didn't have the knowledge. I could be egotistical and go, "Oh yeah, I could do it." But I mean, I know I couldn't have because I didn't have the same knowledge. So where I might have still had it within my spiritual body, clearly, and I have access to that information now. And I 100%, I'm like all in. I know for a fact I'm getting ridiculous results. I didn't have access to that information 10 years ago. I had to it was kind of like maybe going to medical school in a sense. You have to take basic 101 courses, and you have to take advanced courses, and you have to get into specialty courses, etc. So I've spent a lot of my career doing basic, then advanced, then more specialty stuff has come later in life. Hence the more specialty books that I'm writing also now. I had to layer that. And you're sort of similar in the same thing. You've layered it, even just being opposite of a healer such as myself. You're also layering a lot of knowledge over the past, 5, 10 years that you didn't have before. I mean, if you think about it, you're heading
Yeah.
on the right path in marketing, but and working with that stuff as well. But you've spent a lot of time and commitment developing that. So, in one aspect, that was your purpose, but where you pivoted was how you were utilizing that purpose, wouldn't you say? Like,
Yeah, if we're talking about marketing,
yeah,
I would say the one thing that I would notice, like when I was at work, that would get me the most excited is if somebody asked me a question and they wanted to, they needed help with something. And if I could teach them how to do it, oh my God, that like lit me up. I got so much joy out of that. And it's not like doing the actual marketing work that I
right,
liked, it was the teaching aspect. And so then that started to be like, hey, I really enjoy this. And so, like, when I started my YouTube channel, that was super fun. I mean, I was using skills I've never used. I didn't touch a camera, was not on camera before 2020. So it's like
right.
all of these skills and new things have kind of like come out of this.
Well, and then to make sure that people understand that, you couldn't have taught those things had you not developed the skill. So you
Yeah.
developed the skill that you then turned around and started to teach. And I did the same thing. I couldn't have taught running out of the gate. I had to experience, learn, and have those abilities as a psychic in order for me to then turn around and teach like I do with all my classes that I teach. So that's another thing that where timing is kind of essential to where your purpose is at that moment in time. Our purpose when we were younger was to be developing the the foundation of our teaching work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We can't just jump right into teaching, it doesn't work like that. So, if you are, again, one of those people who wants to be a healer, a teacher, write a book, and things of that nature, don't get too frustrated. I remember feeling frustrated when I wanted to write a book. And I remember it's so weird thinking back to where you were on your journey. I remember exactly where I was. And when we lived in South Dakota at one of my favorite houses that we lived in, and talking to my son about wanting to write books. And he's like, "Yeah, I think you're going to write," because he was always very psychic. We were just happened to have that. We had a lot of spiritual conversations, even when he was younger. And then I said, "Yeah, I feel like I need to write like six, though. I keep getting like this six." And weirdly enough, when I started writing, I wrote six books, like right one after another. And I never thought about it. It appeared later where I was like, "Oh my gosh, I remember that conversation that I had." But I also remember the frustration of feeling like, what the heck would I write about? When would this even happen? And am I even a writer? Do I even have this skill? But then the funniest thing about that too is I also remember my 20s trying to write I started writing romance because I was like, I don't know how to write about spiritual stuff. I was working on that at the time. But I had tried my hand at writing in my 20s, and then I just blew it off. And then the next thing I know, it comes up again in my early 30s. And then the next thing you know, in my late 30s, I'm writing all the things, but I couldn't see where that was going. I just felt the urge to move that direction. So that's another thing about your purpose and your destiny, so to speak, is when you have an urge to move that direction, you want to head down that path and see what opportunity or information is down that path. But again, that's typically where we run into the resistance aspect in our brain. I only have so much time during the day. I don't know if I can go down that path, or that path seems very unreachable because maybe they don't have the money for a class. Maybe they don't offer it in your area. Maybe you know what you want to do. So instead of going, I know there's stuff on YouTube. I know there's books I can read for free. I know I can just take this time during my lunch break or whatever. Instead of trying to figure out how it works, a lot of us try to explain away how it's not going to work. Don't have enough time, don't have enough money, not offered here. Well, pretty much everything's offered anywhere now with online, right? So you can find everything that way, but we're really taught to explain why we can't do something. And it's really weird because we're explaining it to ourselves a lot
And
of the
it
time.
holds us back, and I know that I do it too, and I think this is some of the things that we were talking about earlier of, like, the frustration and how it kind of I hold myself to an impossible standard,
Oh, I do too. I'm right there with you.
and I get
Mm.
frustrated when I don't achieve when I don't achieve those impossible things that I have held myself to, and so then I kind of go into this spiral. I don't know if it's like, shaming myself, and I'm just, continually holding myself back and getting frustrated because I'm not where I think I should be.
However, I would like to point this out to you, and because it is my experience as well, and it's going to sound weird because I'm literally in the profession of spiritual work, but I also look at it as a profession. So it's a business, and it's something I do daily, all the time. So when I view my professional career, I can accidentally veer away from my spiritual alignment with it, even though I have the knowledge and I have the info and I can teach it all day long with my eyes closed. On a personal level, if I'm not careful, me and you do the same thing. I run myself on a hamster wheel until my legs are so tired I cannot move the wheel anymore. And me and you were on the same journey where we started noticing this, and we both noticed we had to pivot from what it was we were currently doing. You were doing it with your marketing clients. I was doing it with my spiritual clients, and not just that, but also the meditations I was doing, all of the spiritual work I was doing. I was not in tune with where my guides wanted me to be. And so, funny enough, when I went back to South Dakota to do my own spiritual boot camp, which cracks me up because what is happening with me and Dave? The first spiritual boot camp I do, he all of a sudden becomes like this spiritual wizardry person, right? And reaches wizard status. That sounded weird. But yeah, all of a sudden he becomes this different person. I leave to go do my own retreat. And while I'm there, I get like ridiculous clarity while I'm there. I'm like, oh my goodness. I don't know if you heard that, the dogs, but I am at my own retreat and all of a sudden it just hits me. But I had also been doing the intensives with the clients, and we spend like what, 24, 30 hours you were there,
Yeah.
really connecting in with source and just aligning on a spiritual level. Well, as the teacher, it clearly happened with myself too. So thank God I do them twice a year. Make sure I stay in line. And when I was there, I had been trying to figure out how to get off the hamster wheel and make it work better for my own energy so that I could continue to teach everybody, because they're like, oh God, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, which allows me self pressure, like you said. and allows me to feel like I really need to keep doing what I'm doing. And then it hits me the clarity on the books and how I needed to take a break from the hamster wheel, and I needed to kick out these 3 books specifically that my guides wanted me to put out because they clearly I channel the information in my books. And I came back with the hugest sense of peace and clarity by doing my own spiritual boot camp, which still to this day cracks me up. Like, I'm going there to teach people this stuff, and then I end up benefiting, so it's so funny. But as you connect in personally, whether you're a healer, whether you're a marketer, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a mother or whoever you are, when you are connecting into source on your own personal level and you are really committing time to that, and you are really feeling the connection develop, you can feel your spiritual body becoming more powerful because you are working at amplifying that connection through meditation, through reading, through learning, through viewing things differently. That is the best way that I have found that amplifies my spiritual connection, is when I even my universal laws book, things of that nature. If I really just take time out of my day to view things from a more, I would say, manifestation standpoint, universal law standpoint, what am I allowing in? What am I resisting? What if all things are energy? If you can review your life as from an energetic standpoint and go, here's a problem area. So clearly there's resistance or blockage here. If this blockage or resistance is energetic, what does it look like? Clearly this is working out for me and it feels energetically flowy there. What am I doing different in this aspect of my life? Clearly I'm happy in this area, so I'm definitely vibing high in this area. So what is my thought process? But over here, this stresses me out all the time. So what is my thoughts? What is the energy surrounding this? And I can give you an example. There was a time in my life that it got to where every time I got the mail, I would just stress, because remember when bills used to come in the mail all the time? And I just freaked every time I got it. Like, my heart started racing more. My stomach felt icky because there's been financial crisis times in my life, and it caused me to feel that way. And it wasn't long ago, I'm like, why do I still do this every time I get the mail? Like, this is ridiculous. That ship sailed so long ago, yet my brain was trained with that energy. And so I started going, what if I change this energy though? Because I'm not in that same place, clearly, but I'm still generating the same energetic thought process. So I need to, what if I shift this and go, not only will there not be unexpected bills, what if they're lower? Remember I was telling you about this?
Yes.
And I started going to it was so freaking weird. Which is weird for me to say that. And I really don't even allow my clients to use the word weird, but I went and I got my water bill, which was like $50. It was way cheaper than it would normally was, $50 less. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of weird. Wow, what if that happened with more bills? And then I get my electric bill and it's a lot less than it is. And I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. Is this a fluke? Like, this has got to be like, I shift my energy and all of a sudden that quick, it starts like, so then it made me like kind of interested. Now I'm interested in going to get the mail. Now I want to know what's in there because I want to be like, is there like, are my regular bills still going to just get lower? And I kid you not. The next month, the water bill was again lower and the electric bill was so low that then I started getting concerned. I'm like, wait a minute. Did they screw up? Because like this is literally like my electric bill was almost in half. I think it was cheaper than it's ever been since I've lived in this house for like 15 years. And I'm like, this has to be a mistake. Like now they're getting so low that I'm like, what is happening? And not only that, but we run another business with an Airbnb that I thought, well, again, same type of thing. Right about May, is my gap between what the Airbnb has saved to new Airbnb people coming in. So I may have to cover financially a little bit there. And I was like, yeah, but people need houses. What if like it just booked? I'm doing this during this whole same week, and I kid you not, somebody books, covers that whole month in the Airbnb thing, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Well, then my house payment had gone up right before that, and I'm like, crap, I guess we're going to be short again. But I'm like, no, there's still months to book. I'm just not even going to worry about it, whatever. And yesterday, somebody else booked, covered the whole rest of it and then some. I'm like, this is insane. So even my own self, who, it's very easy for me to teach, but there's times where I get very focused on the teaching aspect, and then I can pivot away from making sure my own connection is heightened. But when I'm writing books, my frequency's off the charts and it just stays there. So when I'm writing books is the best time for me to ask for anything that's going to be like, whoa, why'd that happen?
Well, should we all be asking what if questions? I mean, is
Yes.
that wording? I mean, if we're trying to manifest something, like what if I got a Tesla? No, what can I bring into my life?
Well, you have to then, like I said, you have to be aligned. You have to be coming from a place of alignment, but that's the point of the what if question. Where are you not aligned, and where is your frequency off? Where's your thought process off? So for instance, if you said, what if I did get a Tesla? My guess would be somebody would be thinking, I need a new car, or I don't like the car that I have, or there's just a reason you'd be wanting
Yeah.
that something in your life, right? So you got to figure out where's the discord there. If you're wanting something different, then what's the problem there already? Are you feeling resistant to it? Are you feeling like you don't have enough money for it? Are you feeling like they don't sell Teslas where you're at? Where's your resistance in the flow? Because remember, we're trying to discover where what our energetic thoughts and what energy is surrounding our problem areas, and what energy is surrounding our manifestation or high frequency areas, or happy times. Once you start to categorize that and realize there is a difference, you may have the most awesome love life in the world and your money might be crap, or vice versa. Your money flow energy might be off the charts and your relationships just are in the can. And that means we're balanced in one area, but we need to figure out what energy is surrounding the area that is so off. And I do this all the time. I teach this and I do it daily, literally daily. I'm not even kidding you. Every single morning and every night, I will revisit experiences within my day, things that have happened, and I will look for all things that made me feel good and all things that made me feel upset or worried or something. And I will take the things that make me feel good and I'll be like, okay, I will analyze it and go, I will do more of this because this clearly was a good thing for me. And anything that made me upset or worried, like if you did get an unexpected bill or something, then I would go, you know what? That came in, but that doesn't mean that money is not going to come in tomorrow. It doesn't mean that I don't have the money to pay for this. It just means I don't want to pay for it. And that's, I think, where a lot of us go into. A lot of us have the money. We just don't want to pay for things like taxes, or like, a car breakdown, or like a
Yeah.
medical bill, because those are all expenses that are outside, feeding ourselves and paying for electricity. So we view those as outside intruder expenses. So we need to shift our behavior on outside things that feel intrusive, because it's not their fault. That's all been set in stone forever. It's our belief system on it and how our thoughts process that energy and then engulf the energy around that experience. And that's what we need to shift, because it belongs to you and it belongs to you only. You're not going to have the same views as I'm going to have, that somebody else is going to have on the same subjects. Some of us are, some of us are not, but it's your personal belief system. It's your personal thought process and energy that surrounds that situation or that thing. So I always self-analyze. If this isn't going well in my life, or this made me feel upset, or whatever, why? Why? What am I doing here? How do I shift my perspective on this? And let's say it's somebody who is unhappy within their job. And every day that they go, that creates, a huge part of your day, and you're upset every single time that you go. Then how do you reframe that? You can reframe it by going, yes, I'm more grateful for this or that. But how about pivoting? How about giving yourself an out in the future? How about starting to look for other jobs? How about starting to do a side hustle? This is how you spiritually align.
Yeah.
You do not force yourself to stay down that road. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I feel, hopefully, do you think we have any other questions we didn't cover on the purpose thing?
I don't think so. But if anybody does have any questions, do feel free to add those in the comments. And if we need to circle back to something in the future, we definitely can.
Yeah, we definitely can. And or make sure to post any future shows you would like to have us answer a question on. So if you have any question about this or that on spirituality, you can post it on this podcast, because with each podcast, we will come back and we will read your comments and then try to answer them. So definitely comment if you found it helpful,
And
if
like,
you, and like and subscribe, because otherwise you might not get the little notification thing. So definitely comment below, letting us know if you found it helpful, but also what other things are you struggling with when it comes to a spiritual lifestyle or spirituality. So just to kind of recap, your purpose is within your spiritual body. And if you are very focused within your 3D world, it will feel like there's a brick wall between you and your spirituality. Therefore, you're not going to have access to that information very easily. And you don't just find out what your purpose is. Even if you go to a psychic or anybody and they say, hey, this is your life purpose, you're still like, well, how do I jump the brick wall and how do I get through this information? So you need to cultivate this relationship with your spiritual body first. That is necessary. You need to be more aware of it. You need to connect with your spiritual body. You need to learn how it operates. You need to connect in with your spiritual abilities, maybe developing your psychic stuff or your whatever it is. And once you start connecting in, you can do that through meditation. You can do it through developing a skill set, through spirit journaling. And the more that you become in tune with your spiritual body, that's where the information lies. And so the brick wall will start to deteriorate, and then it might just be a fog, and then you have the urge, you can sense it's right there but you can't quite reach it. You want to continue on the spirituality path and really develop that aspect of who you are. You want to question the 3D rules and all of the resistance that you are putting up in the universe for yourself, via your belief system and what other people say. And then once you start to shut out the 3D rules, you start to become more in tune with the spiritual rules and how things actually operate, which I believe gives people a lot more hope and faith anyways, that things will work out for them. So I feel like that's a very, very important aspect to have in your life. You have hope, you have somewhere to reach for things happening. Then when that happens, you can, again, you're cultivating this relationship, and then the fog starts to clear. So everything starts to head that direction where you can then access your purpose. And do keep in mind, they will and do shift throughout your lifetime. And also you can have multiple purposes. And then if you're really lost and confused, you could always come to my boot camp or something along those natures, because apparently it helps us all when we do them. So anything to add to that? That was a decent summary. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think that was good.
Okay. So until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment on anything that you want to hear in the future. Both me and Michelle's websites will be below if you want to check those out further. And I guess we'll see you next Tuesday. So have the most amazing day. Aloha. Bye.
Bye.